Today we're talking ACC preseason win totals. Jake, I've got my 3 picks. Do you have yours ready?
I'm ready to go. ACC, kind of a up-and-coming conference. They were sneaky good last year, low-key.
Well, you've got teams like Florida State who are finally on the rise. Teams like that who are supposed to be good who finally are. If you're new to BroThrow, make sure you hit the subscribe button because Jake and I will be here all season long giving you our betting predictions, and we love talking college football. But with that, let's start this one off with Louisville over 8 at -120. The Jeff Brom era finally begins, and he brought in over 20 transfers for this first year. They returned 13 starters off a team that went 7-5, but both sides of the ball are going to have different schemes. They've got a pass-heavy offense now, and their defense moves over to a 4-2-5 that's built to stop the pass. Let's start with the offense. They've got Jack Plummer from Purdue and Cal, who's played in 29 games and thrown for 6,500 yards. He's a pocket passer that's working with other transfers from Cincinnati, Tennessee, and Jackson State, but Jeff Brom has a history of finding and developing really good receivers, so I've got some faith here. Keep in mind, Plummer did work with Jeff Brom for a couple of years at Purdue before he transferred out to Cal, so this is a relationship that they're just going to build back up and pick up wherever they left off. The offensive line has 2 starters coming back. Both guys were all ACC picks, and the running back room returns 2 of their top 3, including Jahar Jordan, who averaged almost 6 yards a carry. Again, this is all about the pass game. They're going to run a little bit, but I'm really looking to see what Jack Plummer can do with these 3 new receivers who are all transferring in with him. On defense, they returned their entire secondary, plus they added Storm Duck from UNC, who was second team All ACC last year. And then they added 4 transfers at linebacker and the defensive line. So the defense is in question because it's going to feature more DBs and less linebackers, but it's going to work to their advantage since their secondary is stacked and their linebacker room doesn't have as much depth. Now, the reason I'm loving the over 8 is because they don't have to play the best 2 teams in their conference. Clemson and Florida State are both off the schedule. You've got 4 free wins: Georgia Tech, Murray State, Indiana, and Virginia. You've got 0 free losses, and you've got 8 toss-ups. The 8 toss-ups: Boston College, Notre Dame, Duke, Virginia Tech, and Kentucky all at home, NC State, Pitt, and Miami on the road. They've just got to win 5 of those 8 toss-ups, and I really like their road setup. NC State, Pitt, Miami are not elite teams. Those are going to be games they can win, and then you've just got to win a couple of those home games, maybe Boston College and Virginia Tech. So Jeff Brom in his first year to get to 8, feeling great to me.
The schedule looks juicy, although I would be a little hesitant to call Indiana a free win. That's going in the toss-up category for sure. But as you said, they avoid the toughest 2 opponents in the ACC. Notre Dame at home, probably the next toughest opponent on their roster. Jeff Brom is a really, really good coach. He's kind of been obscured because he's been at Purdue, but he turned some really not so good players into really strong, solid players. So you give him a quarterback who he's already worked with, he's familiar with, who knows the offense. There should be no learning curve, and the offense should be flowing from game one. I love the transfer class that they had, a top 10 class in the entire nation. So I expect Louisville to have a very strong season next year. I like the over 8.
A lot of faith in Louisville. I know there are a lot of people on them, so we'll see if that moves to 8.5 or if the odds get worse. But right now at -120. Moving on to Florida State over 9.5, -142.
Yeah, Florida State, as you said, they're one of the top 2 teams in the conference. They had a really strong year last year, going over 9.5 wins, having a 10-win season. And they're going to be big favorites in virtually every single game on the schedule, except for Clemson and LSU. LSU at home, Clemson on the road, but they're going to have a chance in both of those games. And the other 10, I would say, are they'll be favored by at least 7 points in virtually all of them. The toughest on the schedule besides those 2, maybe at Florida, who I'm down on this year, maybe against Miami, who not as strong in the last couple of years. They have the number 6 overall transfer class in the entire country coming in, including impact starters like Keon Coleman from Michigan State, a wide receiver who had 800 yards and 7 touchdowns last year, and Jakeem Bell, a tight end who had 500 scrimmage yards and 5 touchdowns. Add that on to Jordan Travis, who's coming back, who's a legitimate Heisman contender, and their number 1 receiver from last year, and their number 1 running back from last year. They have so much talent at the skill positions that they're going to be able to put up tons of points in this conference. Their coach, Mike Norvell, has improved every single season he's been at Florida State, going from 3 wins to 5 wins to 10 wins last year. Now you give him his most complete team, his most offensively ready team. This is a team that's ready to go, and I think they could be a sneaky college football playoff contender. Give me the over 9.5 for sure.
I'm taking the over here because I love this team to win 11 games. I think they have one loss to either Clemson or to LSU, but I don't think they lose both. Again, we talked about Travis being a potential Heisman winner. So I love over 9.5 here, even though you got to pay some juice, but I'm taking it with you. Next, I've got NC State over 6.5 at -140. And let me start here. NC State has won 8 games, 5 out of the last 6 seasons. So Dave Doran has proven to be reliable in this spot. On offense, they lost Devin Leary to Kentucky, but they picked up Brennan Armstrong from Virginia after he threw for over 9,000 yards and 58 touchdowns. And with him comes his former OC, Robert Anae, who just came off a fantastic, well, not a fantastic season for Syracuse, but a really good offensive effort where he had Garrett Schrader and Sean Tucker combined for over 4,000 yards and 38 touchdowns. The way he was able to turn Syracuse offense around, I have no doubt that we're going to see some production with Brennan Armstrong and his 3 returning starters on the offensive line. The question marks are at receiver and running back since there are a few starters returning, but they didn't do that much last year, and that's why we don't know what it's going to really look like. I think this is going to be more of a run-heavy attack since Brennan Armstrong is a dual-threat quarterback, but there's still going to be questions up until we get to that first game. The focus point and the reason that I am going on the over is because of the defense. They ranked in the top 20 nationally last year, and they were only giving up 19 points a game. But now they're going to return 7 starters in total, including their top 3 linebackers and one of the best cornerback units in the ACC. Then you have to add Savion Jackson back to the line. He didn't get to play last year because of an injury. And then Robert Kennedy transfers in from Old Dominion, who's going to start at nickel. This defense is already proven. They're only getting more talented. I think the offense is just going to have to keep them off the field a little bit longer to help them take the next step. And if the offense can keep them off the field longer, hopefully the offense can score a little bit more. And then we're talking about an 8, maybe a 9-win team once again. Their schedule's favorable. You've got 4 free wins in UConn, VMI, Marshall, and Virginia. 1 loss to Clemson, but that leaves you with 7 toss-ups. Notre Dame, Louisville, Miami, UNC all at home. Duke, Wake, Virginia Tech on the road. Can they win 3 of those? I like them to do it. Give me the -140.
I love how NC State's schedule breaks down for their road games. We all know that road games are very difficult to win in college, but they have a very easy schedule. UConn, Virginia, Duke, Wake Forest, Virginia Tech. I think they're going to have a chance in all 5 of those games. And if they can take care of business in those games against teams that they have more talent than, then they'll definitely go over 6.5, only needing 2 home wins.
Your next pick is Virginia, under 3.5 at -115.
Well, similar to what you were just saying, part of the reason you like NC State because they got Brennan Armstrong. I don't like Virginia because they lost Brennan Armstrong. He was the leader of their team, 9,000 yards passing in his career, as you said. And they replaced him with the starting quarterback from Monmouth, a guy named Tony Muskett. No ACC experience. This is a guy who's going to be thrown directly into the fire. And Virginia is not a very strong team. Brennan Armstrong is really, really holding them up. They lost their top quarterback in Armstrong. They just lost their top 5 receivers from last year. Now, granted, they got a running back recruit from Clemson. Their head coach is a former Clemson running back coach, so they have a relationship there. But they're losing a ton of production from last season. They have 2 guaranteed losses in the non-conference schedule at Tennessee and at Maryland. 2 wins against James Madison and William & Mary. They're going to have 2 wins in the ACC, and they only had 1 win in the ACC last year with Brennan Armstrong. It's a difficult schedule. The ACC is a pretty solid, underrated conference. I just don't see 2 wins in ACC play on the schedule for them. Boston College on the road, Miami on the road. They're not going to get it done there. Georgia Tech seems like a good shot to win, but then they got to take care of business against Virginia Tech in a rivalry game. I just don't see it happening. I don't think their quarterback is going to be anything special. It just seems like a really down year for Virginia for me. Could be 2 or 3 wins at the most. I'm taking the under for sure.
They're losing all their best players on offense, and they're going to have to really rely on their run game, it sounds like. I'm probably going under here with you. My next pick is Clemson under 9.5 at +136. There's a reason I'm getting plus odds here, and I feel gross making this pick and betting against Dabo. But if there's a year to bet on the under, this is the one, because the schedule is not easy. You've got Florida State, Notre Dame, and UNC at home. You've got Syracuse, Miami, South Carolina on the road. They just got to lose 3 games, and there are 4 teams I'm looking at right now that they very well could lose to. Let's start off with the offense. Cade Klubnik gets 4 of his 5 offensive linemen back, and they're shifting to an air raid attack, so that should definitely help him. But the receiving core feels brand new, and they only return 1 true starter in Antonio Williams, who had 600 yards last year. Will Shipley's their most proven guy, who averaged 125 yards a game, but they're definitely going to be more focused on the passing attack since they ranked in the bottom 60 nationally last season, and they brought in one of the best offensive minds in the game in Garrett Riley. And keep in mind, he's the best man for the job after last year turning TCU into a playoff contending offense. The real story's on defense. They returned 8 starters, even though they lost 4 guys with all ACC honors to the NFL, and they're still going to be in position to contend for the number 1 defense in the country. They've got 2 NFL D tackles returning. Barrett Carter and Jeremiah Trotter could be the best linebacker duo in the nation. And their only weakness last year was against the pass, where they finished 76th nationally. So they can potentially get exploited by teams like Florida State, South Carolina, UNC, all teams who like to pass and have NFL QBs. But that is going to be the one block here that's going to make me have second doubts about taking the under. The defense is just so strong, and they've proven that so many years in a row. Like I said, having the 76th ranked defense nationally against the pass really raises eyebrows. You've got Florida State who can throw it, UNC who can throw it, Notre Dame who can throw it, and South Carolina. If they lose 3 of those, we hit. So I know I'm rolling the dice, but I'm going to take the shot.
Yeah, I can't say I love this pick. Their defense was rough last year, but that was the first year since defensive coordinator Brent Venables left. You have to think that now they're going to be much improved from that year. They've got a little bit more stability with their new defensive coordinator coming back for his second season. And the points that you mentioned about the schedule are kind of, beauties in the eye of the beholder. Yes, they have a lot of tougher opponents at home, but that makes it more likely, I think, for them to win those games versus if they were on the road. I mean, obviously, Clemson has an incredible fan base. They fill the stadium up every single game, and their home field advantage is a big factor. I think they got a good chance in a lot of these home games. The road games are relatively easier, so I think they're going to have a chance in a lot of those too. I don't know. Klubnik is a solid quarterback to me. I like the air raid scheme here. I think that Clemson is. I would lean towards the over for Clemson, to be honest.
Yeah, I get it. It's a 50-50 shot, that's for sure. Well, more in your favor since I'm getting the plus odds. But
Yeah.
I just think if I'm going to take the under on Clemson one time in my life, this is the time to do it. Moving on to Wake, under 6 at -120.
Yeah, Wake has been very strong for the last couple seasons, but there's a huge difference this year. Starting quarterback Sam Hartman is out, and backup Mitch Gritz is in, and we don't really know anything about Griff's. Not to mention, Wake Forest is not picking up a single offensive starter from the transfer portal. They're only getting 2 starting caliber defenders from the transfer portal, so a pretty weak class. They're also losing their number 1 wide receiver and their number 2 running back from last year. And I just see it too many times in college football where a team loses their longtime 4-year starter at starting quarterback, and they just fall off a cliff the next season. Their schedule is actually not too bad. I can see them starting off 4-0 against Elon, Vanderbilt, Old Dominion, and Georgia Tech. But then they kind of run into the tough part of the ACC schedule. I don't really see them getting 2 to 3 wins towards the end. I think that there's going to be a lot of turmoil with that quarterback position. And I know Dave Clawson's a good coach, but I think this is going to be a down year for the Demon Deacons. They're going to have to really put in some more work in the transfer portal in the future, in my opinion.
I didn't even think Wake looked that good last year with Sam Hartman. So after a year last year that felt underwhelming and now losing a bunch of their key guys on offense, I'm going to definitely take the under with you. -120 feels pretty fair. And going 7-5 last year was, in my opinion, lucky. I don't think they're doing that again.
Yeah, Hartman put the team on his back hard. There were a lot of games where they had some comeback wins or just flat out lucky wins that they probably will not get this year with Mitch Griff's at quarterback.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, Jake, thank you for your picks, and I will see you in the next one when we talk about the Big Ten.
Can't wait.